The nicest thing I can say, and the most honest thing, is that whenever his name was mentioned, everybody smiled. Nobody could stay serious when you're talking about or talking to Big Gordy.
We had fun all the time. We did the job, but you know, it was fun.
He was an infectious sort of guy.
He tried to hide a big heart behind a very witty exterior.
Larger than life and very, very welcoming.
A good person, so a laugh.
A smiley, happy guy and someone that everyone got on with all the time.
Gordon was just Gordon. He was unique, really. He always had the sort of the right words to say at the right time.
Always be up for a laugh, always trying to do right by people.
He just brought fun to everything.
He was a fantastic guy. He was Mr. Oldham.
He was funny, he was very, very witty, always had a smile on his face, and everybody loved him.
We laughed all the way there, and when we'd lost, he rollicked me all the way back.
I mean, our relationship goes back a long time. Well, I'd been here 6 years when I was looking for somebody to come in and start up a new lottery for us, and Gordon came in for an interview. I remember it now, 1986. And his character immediately grabbed you. You know, he was right for the place. He was right for the club.
Didn't have an awful lot to do with Gordon at the time, because he was on the pool side, on the commercial side. I was still doing what I did through the Joe Royal years, but it was when the club was heading towards administration that Gordon appeared upstairs to find out if I knew who the people were who were going to take it over. And he came into the press room, saw the press buffet and said, "Oh, I didn't know you had all this, Roy. I'm going to be a regular here after the match now." And and he was, but his question was, "Who are they?" And gosh, you're always close to the boardroom. I said, "Yeah, I might be, but as it happens, I didn't know." And then from there on then, the website came in and grew. And 14 years doing the commentary with him. And like I said, tremendous chemistry.
From the first day I met him, when I met him here, and he was telling me that he'd had this operation which had cut into a gland, and since then all he'd ever done was put weight on. And I said, "Oh God, that's terrible, Gordon." And he said, "Yeah, no compensation or anything, you know." And then I asked him to come away with us if he wanted to Norwich for a little trip. We were playing there, you know, come away with the staff, and we went for an Indian meal the night before the game, and I think he devoured a set meal for 6. And we then knew there was nothing wrong with his glands. Listen, there's so many tales about the big fella. He just laughed, you know, whether he was photographer, whether he was commercial, whether he was secretary here, had a great attitude, and as I say, tremendous mickey taker.
He'd get you every time, you know. He'd also tell you stories, and I used to know now to take them with a pinch of salt. And the biggest thing that I remember was the banter between him and my assistant, Billy Ermson, because the two of them were just amazing together. It was like a comedy duo. And I used to try and get Billy in the morning and stay with me as long as I could, because I knew that he'd get more of the stick than I would before we went out training. And it used to be absolutely hilarious. I used to sit back in my chair and the two of them would be going at it in the office before we went out.
It's a little known fact, but Gordon and Roy, whenever a manager leaves the club and they've got a car, Gordon and Roy have to go and pick the keys up from the manager. And there's a certain manager who I won't name, but who left the club in not the best circumstances, and Gordy had to go up and get the car keys. And it was quite a plush country manor, shall we say, where the manager lived. And Gordy got there and it had already gone dark, so he traipsed up this massive gravel driveway, presses the intercom and says, "It's Gordon Lawton from Oldham Athletic, I've come to pick the car keys up." So he says, nobody came to the door, he just saw a window open and a manicured lady's hand come out of the window and just drop the keys onto the gravel. So Gordy's like, can't see the keys. I mean, you know Gordy, he's on his hands and knees scratching around for these keys in the dark. Eventually manages to find them, and he says as he picked them up, he just heard this voice shout out of the window, and you'll find there's no effing petrol in it either.
Well, my favourite story, without a doubt, about Gordon, Roy Butterworth, who's been here since the floodlights run off gas, hasn't he? I mean, he has. And him, whenever I have a rhythm, when I come to Oldham, I like to get here about 12:15, 12:30. And then I always used to have a sit down, me, Gordon, Roy, and Alan, the club photographer, put the world to rights. That's before anything about, can you arrange for me to talk to, can you see if he'll come up to the point, the press day stuff. We always put the world to rights first. And a couple of years ago, it was Roy's 75th birthday. And you know, him and Gordon have been together since Adam was a lad. But Gordon arranged for a birthday card from the local undertaker, which said, "Happy birthday, Roy. Hope to see you soon." Now, as soon as they told me, I was on the floor laughing. And I could never walk through the door at the Sports Direct since then and see those two together without immediately thinking, see you soon. And Roy used to grizzle about it, but he was absolutely delighted, obviously, that Gordon had arranged it. But in some ways, to me, that typifies Gordon. Happy birthday, Roy. Hope to see you soon, from the local undertaker. I mean, it's very slightly cruel, but he picked his targets really well. But you've got to admit, it is one of those, it's so good, you think, God, I wish I'd thought of that.
Me and Darren, one day, after, I can't, probably before you two lads in, Roy will remember it, when the old players' lounge, and there was a corridor about as wide as that. And can you remember it, Roy? Yeah. And I can remember walking down it, and Tony, an old fella, Tony, used to be a cleaner. He wasn't far off the same size as Gordon. And we were both at the end of the corridor talking to each other. So my brother Darren was in front of me, and he's walking through anyway. As he's walking through, they both like squeeze themselves together, and Gordon says, "Now you know what a hot dog feels like." it was so comical, and just the wit of him, and just the way he said it, and me and Darren were in stitches over it.
The one that springs to mind is that Scunthorpe down to 9 men, winning 1-0 against a run of play. We absolutely battered them throughout. They retreated into the goal area, all 9 men for the whole of the second half, and we equalised in injury time. And Gordon was, there was a lady sat in front of us, was glaring at us throughout the match. And suddenly, in it went, 1-1, and they defended heroically. They just sat in the goal area for the whole of the second half. And Gordon leaned over, because she'd been quite vocal throughout the game, and give a Brazilian-type goal right into her ear with his microphone. And she just swung round with her handbag in her left hand and clocked him one. God, just leaned back there like, you know.
I remember one time at Exeter, in the tight press box up there at half-time, and Roy and Gordon were on commentary duties, and a former player walks in the back and starts chatting to Gordy about old times, and the name of a former player comes up, a different former player, and this fella says to Gordy, "Yeah, he was a good player. If you get him out of the pub." And Gordy, you know, has a bit of a laugh and a giggle until he notices that the console is still live, and he's scrabbling around at this console to try and turn it off and cut the mic. And you know, that was the kind of thing that appealed to Gordon's sort of dark sense of humour, really. You know, he had such a cracking wit.
There was obviously some interest in January in myself from another club, and there was possibility of it happening. And Gordy, the day I came back in after the non-happening of the event, shall we say, came back in, and Gordy, he's just in his own inimitable fashion, just, "Oh, you're back." And that was it. It was just the way he was. It was no frills, no fuss, but he didn't say as such, but you could tell from his tone that I think he was happy that I was back. I took it that way anyway, but no, he was a great guy, and he was always someone that the lads wanted to pass the time of day with and see on a regular occurrence.
He'd been on holiday somewhere and there'd been a security check and everybody had to get off the plane and stand next to their cases on the runway, and he said it was hot everywhere. He said, you can imagine, I'm sweating like God knows what, you know, and all the security around with their dogs, and they wouldn't leave his case alone, you know. And the security said to him, you know, why on earth won't the dogs leave your case alone? They're all over it. And he said, well, I don't know. He said, but I can assure you there's no dog food in there, you know. So that was his humour. He was very sharp. You know, you had to be very clever to take Gordon on.
I like to think I'm organised, and sometimes I do get a bit intense over things, and Gordon used to jump on that. He'd come in each day and could tell when I was a little bit worked up about things, and he'd throw something in there, have me questioning myself. I'd go upstairs to the office, and 5 minutes later there'd be a text, a phone call, or a message, and that little cheeky giggle, that's why I say he was cheeky, he'd had, and it used to wind me up, and I'd be shouting downstairs, or I'd run downstairs, you can't wind me up like that. And the next breath, or then the relief sets in, and this, and that's where he was. He probably, out of all the people I've worked here, he could read me the best.
It was like a game, and everybody he just had that fantastic uniqueness about him, and great personality. And as I said, you know, lots of money in sport nowadays, particularly in Premier League football. But I'd like to think that there are lots of characters, none, in my view, bigger than Gordon. I can't think of one certainly any bigger as a wind-up merchant, because you never quite knew, you know, whatever he said, is that right, you know? And then that's where I said, Gordy says, and people, you know, will refer to that all the time, and well, that's what he says, you know what I mean? Is that true? Well, I don't know, you'll have to ask him. And I think you played the game, we all played the game, and we still do to a certain extent, don't we? Because there's always that to-ing and fro-ing with members of the media, but I think he really enjoyed it anyway. Massive part of Oldham Athletic.
My memories of Gordon will always be, you know, good ones in being a good Oldham supporter and good at his job, whether it be the programme or his commentary. And loads of times he used to say, you know, Richie, you're my best player. I don't know if he meant that. I always, you know, took it as a little joke between ourselves. And the last game that I actually played for the club, it was Blackpool in the playoffs away, and we'd unfortunately been knocked out in the semi-finals of the playoffs. And Gord said, he actually looked at me and said, "You're leaving, aren't you?" And I actually looked at him and went, "I don't know, Gord." I actually had a feeling that I was going to leave, but you know, and he looked at me in the eye, and he kind of knew what people was thinking. And I always regret not just saying, "Yeah, Gord, I'm probably going to leave you." You know, and that was disappointing that I actually couldn't tell him the truth at the time. But you know, he never held that against me. He was always happy, he was always smiling, and a fantastic guy.
He was very innovative, particularly nowadays with sort of modern media and given his age, but people will remember the 5 gold rings that he put together in the compilation. At the time I was like, there's no chance I'm doing that, and he promised me that it would come out all right, and that was good fun. But I think for me, the nice thing was obviously still am a young manager, but I was a rookie going into the job, particularly when I took the job. The club were in the relegation zone, and in my first press conference, when it seemed like madness to appoint Lee Johnson, sort of football manager rookie in a relegation battle, he really settled the nerves, and he was calm, and he looked after you. He was still tough on you with his questioning, but in a way that he could show the fans that he was asking their questions, but he always had the club's best interest and the manager's best interests at heart, and that means, and that meant, that you could trust him.
He was just there at everything you wanted to do at Oldham. He was there with the first team. He went home and away. He was in the offices. He was promotions, everything else. He'd done everything. He lent his hand to everything. And he's just a fantastic guy. I think a lot of people you'll speak to won't have a bad word to say, and it's easy for me to say that, but he was a fantastic guy.
When my daughter Cece died 5 years ago, he was just randomly was in Lanzarote at the same time, and he'd seen it in a newspaper over there before it had sort of made the papers back home, and he was one of the first people to ring us up and to offer him and his wife's condolences to us. So that just sort of showed you the type of person that he was.
the reaction that everybody has seen on social media, on the website, people coming forward to speak of Gordon, I think speaks volumes of the man, and I just hope that that everybody will never forget him. He was fantastic for this football club.
He was a man who was very witty, very humble, very knowledgeable about the game, and he was just, everyone loved him.
Before a game, you know, he'd sit on the bench before, and I think just take it all in. That's probably my memory of Gordon. It reminds me a little bit of the image I've got of Tim Robbins in the Shawshank Redemption when he sat on the roof just looking at it and taking the scene in. And I always felt that with Gordon, he'd sit there before a game and survey what really was his club. Far more so than my club. He'd been here a long time and it was a part of his DNA, and he's going to be irreplaceable.
If he's, you know, I always say that if he's up there looking now, he'd be having a giggle thinking of, God, wonder which poor buggers are going to carry my coffin.
I've been in and around his company for when I was a player and obviously being a manager, and he was just a massive supporter of Oldham. Just wanted them always to win and do well, and he's seen the club lose a lot of games, but he was just always the same when you win or lose, and just wanted them to be successful, and he never got down too much in my eyes. Every time I see him when you'd lose a game, you know, he's just looking forward to the next game, so no, he's going to sadly missed.
He's just been a massive part of an awful lot of people's lives for an awful long time, and it's very difficult for that to sink in when that's not going to be the case anymore in the future, because there won't be another one. There can't be another one. They only made one.
I think he knew me better than probably anybody else has done. I'm very sad. I'm going to miss him a lot.
He was really unique. You know, he did various roles at the club, started in the lottery. He took over editing the programme from myself when I moved on to become chief executive. He did the match commentary, he did, moved on to be the club secretary. You know, somebody will replace him in those jobs, but you'll never replace the character that Gordon was. He was a special person.
And it's the last commentary that you'll hear from me. It's been a privilege to speak to you over the 20 odd years I've done Latics Player HD. Thank you for listening to me rambles and me moans and the good times as well.
Yeah, and we've had some of them. We've had a bit of a blast, haven't we, Gordon, really?
And so with the score here finishing Wimbledon 0, Oldham Athletic 0 for the final time, it's goodbye from Gordon. Thanks for listening to us. Goodbye.